it's not really gold that is strong. It's just that they're going to continue, and by they I mean the central bankers and the governments, to inflate the system, because that's the only thing they can do in order to keep the system going.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for December 25th, 2023 through January 1st, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature 1 10th-ounce gold maples at just $30 over melt with a minimum order of 5. Next, we have silver eagles at $4.99 over spot, making this a great time to swap silver bars into silver eagles at the lowest premium in years. Finally, constitutional 90% silver is just $3 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today, the first of the year, 2024, is Mario Innecco from the Innecco64 YouTube channel. Mario, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome, and it's nice to be your first interview for 2024.
Definitely. It's a pleasure to have you. I did want to discuss, where have we been this last year? Looking at the gold price first, it seems like we had quite a year for gold, and we actually closed at a new closing high. I believe it was a new high for the month and a new high for the yearly close. So your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, up until recently, it looked like gold was going to stay in that range we've had since 2020, between basically 1800 and 2000. I know we went down to 1600 at one point, but I think with the markets and investors pointing to rate cuts, to trouble in the U.S. economy and other countries, gold has been able to actually break out from that trading range. And on a closing basis, yes, we had a new monthly close above 2000, new high. I think in November the close was around 2040. We closed around 2062, and we had the highest closing for the year, the quarter. So I think it's quite significant for gold. And I think if you look at the long-term charts, especially the logarithmic charts, which take account of percentage change going back to the 70s, gold doesn't look like it's gone up that much in the last few years. So there's still a lot of room, in my opinion. And all that says to me is that it's not really gold that is strong. It's just that they're going to continue, and by they I mean the central bankers and the governments, to inflate the system, because that's the only thing they can do in order to keep the system going.
I know we have seen a negative correlation recently with the US dollar index and gold. So it does seem like the weakness of the dollar has something to play into this. You mentioned recently that the dollar is dropping against the Swiss franc. What do you think the significance of this is?
Yeah, first, I'll talk a little bit about the dollar index and then the Swiss franc. Dollar index, for example, bottomed at just above 70 in 2008. That was when gold topped just above 1,000 in March of that year. That was the day, actually, that Bear Stearns was bailed out or taken over by J.P. Morgan. And here we are, almost 16 years later, and the dollar index is around just above 100. And you would think gold would be below 1,000, but it's not. So the dollar index, yes, in the short term, when the dollar index is weak, it helps gold. But over the long term, I would say don't let it fool you, especially if you are not an American and hold other currencies. And what I mean by that is the dollar index is not an alternative, but gold is. For the Swiss franc, seeing that the Swiss franc, and I have to give credit also to the Singapore dollar, but I'm more familiar with the franc. It's been the best performer out of all the fiat currencies, dollar included, since Nixon closed the gold window. And I've noticed recently that it's gone in the last month or month and a half from, you could get 92 centimes, which is the cent equivalent in Switzerland, for $1. And now it's down to like 83, which isn't the all-time low, but it's worrying because it tells me that wealthy investors, fund managers, they see trouble for the dollar, so they're moving to the Swiss franc. Many of them, of course, don't consider gold as an alternative, and I think eventually they will realize that gold is even better than the Swiss franc. But in my opinion, unless the Swiss National Bank starts cutting very quickly and very soon, we could continue to see the dollar drop, and I think that's a bad sign. Not just for the dollar, but also even for the pound, which has gone up versus the dollar, but is fast approaching 1-to-1 with the Swiss franc. I remember when I moved here to the UK from Switzerland in 1992, you could get about 2.8 Swiss francs for the pound.
So it seems like the move away from the dollar, that's another sign of it, people seeing other currencies as valuable as well. But it seems like, all currencies around the world are fiat currencies. So it can't, the end game, right, is that a rejection of all fiat currencies, not just the dollar. So I guess your take on that, when do we start to see, and maybe we're seeing it right now with gold rising in other currencies as well, but when do we see that, I guess, rejection of all currencies, not just the US dollar?
Well, I think I agree with you. I even talk regularly, and I even wrote an article back in 2007, way before I started my channel, and I was still working in the financial sector, that all fiat currencies are going to sink, and that you can only devalue really versus gold, because devaluing against other fiat currencies is just like a ping pong or a table tennis game. One currency would devalue against the dollar, and then the dollar would devalue, and they're all like playing that game. But the ultimate way to devalue is versus gold. And I think the Swiss franc will go down as well versus gold. And and that's why the dollar index, despite being around 100, that's why gold is actually more than doubled since 2008. And gold will be the how can I say, the barometer. It's going to point to the fact that fiat currencies are all sinking. And it will not just rise versus the dollar, but it will rise versus the Swiss franc, the pound, the euro, Singapore dollar, the Aussie dollar, all fiat currencies.
Now, I know central banks have been purchasing gold quite aggressively. Do you think, and we've talked about this before, but do you have any updated or latest thoughts on, a move towards gold, and whether certain countries are going to be moving to gold as a currency rather than keeping with, paper currency that doesn't ultimately mean anything?
Yeah, they have been purchasing, especially like China and all the BRICS countries and global South countries. There's a record purchases, net purchases in 2022. I haven't really, they don't have the official figures yet for 2023, but I suspect it will be very close to the 2022 figure. Yeah, and we have the BRICS as of today. I assume they're expanding, doubling from 5 to 10. As to whether any country will adopt gold as a currency or gold-backed currency, I'm not too sure. But what I think they'll do, it's going to be similar to the Bretton Woods prior to 1971, where if you had a surplus with another country in dollars, you could take that to the treasury and take gold for it at a fixed rate. I'm not sure if they're going to start at a fixed rate, but all it will mean is that if Saudi Arabia has a surplus of yuan, they'll go and redeem that for gold. And let's say India has a surplus of, Brazilian reals, they're going to go and redeem that for gold. That's the way I think it's going to be, and it's not going to be right away. I think they're going to be working on that. These things take a while to evolve. I think even Bretton Woods, the agreement was in 44, but they started looking into a Bretton Woods system, I think around 1941, 42. So it takes a little bit of time. And I wouldn't be surprised if they keep stacking gold again in 2024.
Now, when it comes to geopolitical conflicts, which can obviously impact the gold price, as we saw with the Israel-Hamas conflict, it seemed to really give a boost to precious metals there. Now, it seems like, unfortunately, we're just seeing more and more conflicts arising. The US and the UK, it's just announced that they're getting involved in another conflict. So your perspective on the geopolitical turmoil we're seeing right now?
Yeah, that's to do with Yemen and the rebels there, the Houthis, who are being financed by the Iranians, and there's problems in the Red Sea with the shipping. And the Red Sea is just as important, I guess, as the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, because you can get through the Strait of Hormuz to go to the Suez Canal, but if you can't get through the Red Sea, you won't get to the Suez Canal. So it's just as bad. So it could impact the price of oil. It could impact just shipping in general through the Suez Canal. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least 10% of world trade goes through that canal. And the other geopolitical situation that could be brewing and has been talked about a lot lately is the China-Taiwan situation. I just saw that Xi Jinping, the president of China, just said in his New Year's address that eventually the two countries should, China and Taiwan should merge. And I think they have general elections in Taiwan on January 13th. So I think we need to keep an eye on that too.
Looking towards 2024, what are your biggest forecasts that will impact their financial lives?
Yeah, I think people, it's tough to forecast things. One thing, it's not even forecasting, and it's looking at the fiat currencies. As Voltaire said, fiat paper money always returns to its intrinsic value of zero. And I'm not sure it's going to happen in 2024, but we're going to keep moving towards that zero figure. So that's the only thing I can forecast with certainty. The other one, though, is the bond market. I think there's too much exuberance right now that rates are going to keep going lower. The central banks are going to cut, and that it's safe to be in the bond market. But I think by the end of the year, things will have changed, and it's not going to be a good place to be in the bond markets because I think the central banks will have kind of lost control of prices again. And by prices, I mean consumer prices.
We've talked about for a while, and I know with my other guests as well, this idea that the Fed is trapped, right? Because if they raise interest rates, then the economy collapses. If they lower interest rates, then we go into high inflation again. Do you see, it sounds like you see this really coming to a head in 2024. That's
right. And I don't think they're going to raise again because things were getting pretty disruptive, especially the bond market. Yields are 10-year yield was moving above 5%. But the flip side of the coin is that every time they start cutting rates, it's a signal that there's a stock market correction or crash, that the economy is going to recession. So I guess that's why they are between a rock and a hard place. But it looks like, as I spoke earlier today in my first video of the year, that investors, economists in the mainstream expect a lot of cuts. So it will be an interesting year to experience, I guess.
It certainly will be an interesting year. What are some of the steps that you're taking or you believe that others should take to prepare for what's coming?
Well, I mean, if you've been listening to channels like yours and mine, I think you should be all right, because hopefully you'll be guarding against inflation through buying gold and silver. Hopefully, you won't be too exposed. Or, I mean, it's up to each individual what they invest in. But the other thing as well is trying to not be, too much fearful of things, and that's why I think it's good to know what's going on. And yes, to know the nature of the current monetary system, and that this is normal, and not to panic. I would say as well, and keep calm, as they say, and live within your means. Try not to deal too much with the banking system. Keep your transactions with the banking system as little as possible. Of course, for some people or some businesses, that's very difficult, but I think there's always a way to limit that.
And how do you think people will be impacted outside of their financial lives? I know a lot of people talk about if there's an economic crisis, this obviously doesn't just impact people's financial lives, it impacts other areas as well.
Yeah, we've seen throughout history that periods like we are under now, of high inflation, geopolitical, domestic political uncertainty and tensions. Yeah, the general public always gets hurt. I think the other thing as well, when you're in a situation when the currencies get debased so much, the whole of the moral fiber of society gets debased, and crime goes through the roof. The police a lot of times doesn't care anymore because there's so much crime. Yeah, and people get affected. It's not going to be fun. And just think about, a third world country like where I used to live when I grew up in Brazil or Argentina. A lot more crime, a lot more like difficulty getting things done. Yes, strikes. I think we're going to continue to have strikes here because people want better pay because they're not getting compensated enough to fight the currency debasement. So yeah, it's not going to be easy, and hopefully you will have prepared. And also, I would say that it doesn't last forever, this environment, and that things hopefully will get better.
And one of the aspects, I know Rafi Farber has talked about this, about building community, and that's a very important aspect and something that we can take through this crisis with us, our friends and family. And also, I know I recently interviewed John Rubino, and he was talking about this idea of really growing your skills, because as you mentioned, you might not be able to get everything done. You might not be able to pay for everything if there's strikes going on or a collapse scenario, where it's really important to be more self-sufficient, or at least, have relationships with people who know basic skills. Your perspective on that, about growing community and also growing your own skill set, so you can take care of yourself through this crisis.
Yeah, I mean, for example, where I live right now, we moved here 8 years ago, and prior to that, we lived somewhere else, and it was much more isolated. We barely knew our neighbors. But here, where we live now for the last 8 years, we know almost everyone around, and I think that's a good thing. And you need to be nice to your neighbors, And as per learning new skills, yeah, that's always difficult, depending, how good you are with DIY and stuff like that, and how close you are, let's say, or how close you are to the countryside, or how much property you have, maybe to buy some chickens and stuff like that. Not everyone can do that. But yeah, I think community is really important. And it's not just the local community, but also like you and I here, even though I've never met you physically, that's a community in itself, I think, and all the other followers of our channel, the people that we interview. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to have.
Definitely. And it'll be very interesting to continue to track 2024 with you, Mario, and also to watch your YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Innecco64. And we'll put a link in the description of this video to that. Any last thoughts before we let you go, Mario?
I just tell Elijah's viewers to make sure they subscribe so that you guys get to 100,000. I think we're pretty close, like 95,000. But joking aside about that, stay calm. Don't panic, because that's what the powers that be want you to do. And when you're scared and panicking, you do things that you normally wouldn't. That's all I would say for 2024.
Fantastic, Mario. Well, thank you so much for your time, and God bless, and have a happy new year.
You too. Thank you.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for December 25th, 2023 through January 1st, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature 1 10th-ounce gold maples at just $30 over melt with a minimum order of 5. Next, we have Silver Eagles at $4.99 over spot, making this a great time to swap silver bars into Silver Eagles at the lowest premium in years. Finally, Constitutional 90% silver is just $3 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.